Hello students, welcome back into the another session of CS22 operating system concepts using Linux and Unix. As all of you know that we are discussing about unit number 9, and in unit number 9, as per the prescribed syllabus of Saurashtra University, the title of the unit is Linux booting, in which in our previous lecture we have gone through the detailed discussion of Linux booting process, which consists of various components like BIOS, MBR, Grub, init, run level, etc. etc. Now it's time to discuss about the two configuration which performs the major role into the Linux booting process, that is Lilo configuration. It's available into the older like operating system, and in newly Linux like operating system, Lilo is replaced with Grub configuration. So we will discuss both of this configuration in detail as it is given into the syllabus. So let's start with the first option, that is called as Lilo configuration. As you can see onto the screen, Lilo means last in, last out. It is actually the Linux loader, which is the most popular bootloader for Linux in older operating system. That means into the starting of Linux like operating system, it consists this configuration which works with the kernel for interacting with users' request and hardware's response. Actually, this is the one type of procedure, or we can say it is a process which executes in a background for choosing the specific bootloader of an operating system. Now, it is used to load Linux into the memory and start the operating system. Once the machine is initiated with the power up button, the first process which has been handled by the entire operating system is the loading of operating system from the main memory. So to load the operating system, this bootloader perform its task. So on a machine which if it contains the multiple operating system, then Lilo is configured to select a specific operating system of a user's choice. So over here it demonstrates the specific task of Lilo configuration. This Lilo configuration works whenever on a single computer there is a dual operating system. If you have not forgotten that in our previous lecture we have learned that in single computer system we can install the multiple operating system as much as the space is available on a separate drives. That means we can install Linux like operating system, means any flavor of the Linux with any flavor of the Windows also. So whenever in a single machine multiple operating system get installed, and suppose you start the system, then it asks for the option which contains two different sections, where option number 1 is for running the Linux like operating system and option number 2 is for running the Windows environment. So it provides actually a one choice, or you can say the switch case to the user for selecting a specific operating system. Now normally Lilo is initially configured for you during the Linux installation process. However, we may find the default configuration which is not correct, and suppose we wish to change anything into the Linux configuration, then we can change the Linux configuration, and or we can say the Lilo configuration by visiting the specific drive and the folder which is available into the configuration folder. But by default, whenever the separate operating system get installed, we need to install first the Linux and then we can install the Windows operating system. And during the startup of the system, suppose we are not selecting any of the option, then by default Linux get installed, Linux get started from the installed system. Now suppose I want to change this sequence. Again I would like to repeat my words. In a single system, suppose I have installed Linux as well as Windows, and whenever I starts my system, it shows a one screen for selecting the specific operating system which I want to load. Suppose I am not selecting any of the operating system, then by default Lilo configuration loads Linux onto the screen, and by pressing the down arrow key, suppose I am selecting Windows, then instead of Linux it loads the Windows. But suppose I want to change the sequence of this particular thing, then it can be done using the specific operation. That means it shows that how can we apply the changes. So for applying the changes, we have to visit a one specific folder which is called as sbin/lilo. Under that you will find a Lilo configuration file, and by opening this Lilo configuration file into the text editor, you can change any of the sequence. But over here one protocol should be maintained: the user must be the super user of the system. That means Lilo configuration can be changed only by the super user, not with the existing users. Again I am repeating my words. Lilo configuration file is a one type of configuration file which is used to load a specific operating system which is installed into the system. By default it loads Linux, but suppose we want to change any of the sequence afterwards, the user must be the super user, and that super user have to visit a one specific folder which is called as /sbin/lilo/lilo.configuration file, and under this they can make any of the changes. Even suppose you want to remove this Lilo configuration file, then it can be simply performed using a one command which is called as /sbin/lilo-u. So over here -u is used to remove the Lilo configuration file from the Lilo directory. So the same thing is written over here. If you have a Lilo installed as your master boot record and you decide to install Linux or upgrade your hard drive, then you will need to remove the older Lilo from the master boot record. Before you remove all these files from the hard drive, make a backup copy of the original file, because if something goes wrong, then you can restore your system. Otherwise it might possible that we will lost the operating system into the operating system from the computer, and ultimately we have to just format the entire system, which might lost our important file directories and the data. So it could be done using this particular command called -u. Now as the time goes up and Lilo becomes the history into the Linux like operating system, it has been replaced with the newer configuration file which is called as Grub Configuration, where the full form of Grub is Grand Unified Bootloader. This is very important as far as the examination point of view is concerned, and in MCQ or for the 1 mark they can ask the full form of such type of short name. So again I would like to repeat the full form of Grub, that is Grand Unified Bootloader. It is actually a bootloader package from GNU project. Grub is the reference implementation of free software foundation multi-boot specification, which provides a user's choice to boot one of the multiple operating system which is installed into the single computer system. So over here we can justify that the functionality of Lilo and the functionality of Grub is same, but the technicality and the architecture of this configuration file gets changed as the technology get enhanced into the market. We will not discuss more about the histories. We don't like the histories, so let's continue. So as I have instructed all of you that Grand Unified Bootloader is again a one type of bootloader just like a Lilo configuration, but this is the project of GNU which provides the free reference implementation of the software foundation for loading a single operating system from the multiple operating system which is installed into the single computer, and it configures the kernel which is available onto the particular operating system's partition. So Grub was developed from the package called Grand Unified Bootloader, plays a very important role of Grand Unified Theory 5. It is predominantly used into the Linux-like operating system, and nowadays in any flavor of Linux, instead of Lilo, this Grub configuration file is used. The GNU operating system use GNU Grub bootloader as it do most of the yet it use into the most of the Linux-like distribution operating system like Red Hat, Fedora, Puppy Linux, Kali Linux, Sun Solaris operating system for 32-bit as well as 64 bits. So in almost, if I am not forgetting any of the name, then almost all the Linux-like operating system nowadays, instead of Lilo configuration, Grub is used because it's a background process which is not visible on a screen, but till the life cycle of the system it get executed from the starting to the shutting down process of the system. One question came in our mind. As far as the theory is concerned, we can bifurcate Lilo configuration system as well as Grub configuration system. But what will be the eye-catchy difference between the Lilo and Grub? So, by considering the user interface called GUI and CUI, where GUI means graphical user interface and CUI means character user interface, we can give the better difference between the Lilo and Grub. So in general, we can say that CUI were introduced into the DOS, that is disk operating system, the first release of Windows official version. Now as the time get passed and newer technology get introduced, nowadays Windows 10 is hot favorite into the market, and shortly Microsoft is going to launch Windows 12 also. So this particular screen shows the difference between GUI and CUI, where on right hand side you will see the screen of CUI which is totally blank and it contains only the valid commands, while on left hand side you will see the screenshot of GUI which consists of several colors, icon and proper layout of the screen, which is right now available into the Windows 10. So in older like operating system like DOS, they are using the Lilo configuration as far as the Linux is concerned, and in newer operating system like Ubuntu, Windows, Red Hat, etc., they use GUI which consists of Grub configuration. So this shows the exact difference between the Lilo configuration as well as Grub configuration in terms of graphical user interface. So this was all about actually the discussion of Linux booting operating system, Linux booting of an operating system that we are using called Ubuntu. In this entire syllabus, we have considered the single Linux-like operating system which is called as Ubuntu. So all this discussion is dedicated to Ubuntu only. So this was all about actually the Linux booting process that we will find during the practical usage of Ubuntu. Now, it's time to go in depth about the working environment of Ubuntu. Here you can see into the title of unit number 10 that they have mentioned words like this: working with X Windows in bracket Ubuntu. And this is our unit number 10. It contains various topics like the layered structure of X Windows, Windows Manager, the KDE desktop. Whenever we'll discuss this particular topic in depth, I will tell you that what is the full form of KDE. Even we will see some screenshots of KDE and etc. etc. I'm just introducing the concepts over here. Then it contains Genome desktop. How can we configure the X window, and some portion which contains how can we install and uninstall the softwares just like Windows in Ubuntu. As you are observing that I have just spoken the name of main topic, it contains subtopics also, so we will discuss all these topics in detail. So let's start with the same. So as mentioned onto the screen, it's time to discuss about layered structure of X Windows. So as per my opinion, first it should be clear that what is the meaning of X Windows. The meaning of X Windows is the graphical user interface layer of the operating system. Just imagine a Windows 10 without any icons onto the desktop, and suppose there is no support of mouse. You have installed the Windows operating system into the computer and there is just a keyboard for handling the entire operating system. Yes, we can handle the entire operating system using keyboard, but it is very difficult for nowadays to quickly complete our task without the usage of mouse and the icons onto the screen. So for that, this layered structure of X Windows has been introduced into the concept of operating system. This layer of X Windows contains several components, where the first component is Windows Manager. So what is Windows Manager? A Windows Manager is a system software that allows Windows Manager is a system software that controls the placement and appearance of Windows within the operating system, or we can say Windows operating system, in graphical user interface. So this is the component which manage all the GUI of entire operating system, where Most Windows manager are designed to help provide a desktop environment, and they work in conjunction with the underlying graphical system that provide the required functionality, support of graphical user interface, hardware interface, pointing devices, uh, specific device drivers of the attached devices like keyboard and external secondary storage devices, and they are often to write and create widgets toolkit. Again, I would like to repeat my words. Windows X layer is made up of various components like Windows Manager. Windows Manager is such type of component which manage all the GUI of the entire operating system. This particular GUI or this particular component not only maintains the GUI, but it also maintains the device drivers of the attached devices, attached external devices. Even it look after the desktop, their icons, and even it supports for creating the new widgets into the operating system. Further, we can discuss about Windows Manager is that a few Windows Manager are designed with clear distinction between the Windows operating system and the Windows Manager. Every graphical user interface based on Windows has some form of Windows management. In practice, the element of this functionality is very greatly implemented by the developers of Windows operating system. In this Windows Manager, elements are associated with the Windows Manager which allows to open, close, maximize, minimize, move, resize, and keep tracking of the running Windows environment with the inclusion of Windows decorators. What is Windows decorator? Windows decorator means by just right clicking onto the desktop, we are able to create the shortcuts, we are able to create the new directory, we are able to rename the directory, and so on. All this part comes into the Windows decorator. Many Windows manager also comes with various utilities and features like clock, calendar, program launcher, desktop icon, and HD wallpapers. If we are not forgetting, then all these functionalities we can perform into the Windows operating system. That means we can change the desktop, we can change the display settings of the desktop, we can move, copy, cut, paste, rename any of the file and folder over the Windows, and etc. etc. That could be handled by one of the component of Windows called Windows Manager, and it is available into the X layer Windows. Even we can further discuss more about the X Windows Manager is that onto the computer system in which the Windows operating system get installed, there is a clear distinction between the Windows Manager and Windows system. Strictly, X Windows Manager does not directly interact with the video hardware or keyboard. It must have to take the permission of Windows system for making the communication bridge between itself with the external devices like video adapter, keyboard, mouse, or any of the external storage, external output devices or input devices. Now the users of X Windows system have ability to manage different Windows manager and used the latest version of X Windows, which is called as Genome. We will discuss more in detail about Genome in next topics, which is previously used as a KDE, which provides actually the Plasma workspace. Since many Windows manager are modular, people can use the other animated softwares like 3D composing Windows manager. Obviously all these are the older techniques. Again, we are into the historical part of the development of Windows operating system, in which we are not that much interested, but in latest one all these things get replaced by Genome. Now X Windows manager also have the ability to pre-parent the application that initially handles all the application which has been adopted by the root of the Windows, and application gets started within the root Windows can be handled by the operating system called as Windows. Windows manager is used under the X Windows system adopted by the application from root window to reparent from the Windows decoration. I know this is little bit difficult to digest, but let me make it simple. One thing is very clear, no doubt we are clear with the X Windows layer, where X Windows layer, in short, it is capable to handle the decorative part of the Windows, but it will not directly access all the other components. They must have to first bridge up with the Windows operating system, and then they can handle the other several component of the Windows, and that bridge up is done by Windows manager. Now the next topic of the discussion is desktop environment. Means once the entire booting process get completed, the next thing which we will visualize onto the screen is desktop environment. We have bifurcated the desktop environment of Windows as well as the desktop environment of Ubuntu operating system, which we are using. As far as the functionality point of view is concerned, both have the similar type of functionalities, but as far as the security, accessibility, portability, interface is concerned, both are totally different. Already in my previous lecture, I have mentioned that Linux like operating system is more sensitive than the Windows. If you unconditionally shut down the system, it might possible that Linux like operating system get crash. You need to install it again for the future use, while in Windows it's not that much sensitive like Linux like operating system. If we unconditionally shut down the system, it restores the lost file automatically by its procedure, and user can access lifelong Windows operating system without losing their data. But once the booting process is completed, the first screen that all of us visualize is the desktop environment, which is in short called as DE. So the full form of DE is desktop environment. Over here, the same thing is written onto the screen. The DE means desktop environment is an implementation of desktop metaphor made of bundle of programs running on a top of computer operating system which shares a common graphical user interface, sometimes described as a graphical shell. This desktop environment was seen mostly on personal computer until the rise of mobile computing, where the desktop GUI helps the user to easily access, edit the files whenever they want to perform such type of functionality into the system. Now this desktop environment is typically consist of various things like icon, Windows toolbar folder, wallpapers and desktop widgets. This desktop environment is actually made up of graphical user interface, where this graphical user interface provides a drag and drop functionality for various icons. A desktop environment aims to be an intuitive way for the users to interact with the computer concept, which is similar to those who used when the multiple users are accessing the same system, contains same size of button on the different screen. So that has been maintained by the desktop environment. In our next lecture, we will discuss more about the implementation phase of desktop environment as far as the Ubuntu operating system is concerned. I hope all of you gets the basic idea of the Windows X, Windows Manager and the desktop environment of an operating system. In our next lecture, we will discuss about some more details about Windows Manager like Start menu, user configuration and StartX command. Till that, thank you very much students for listening me and have a nice day.